You know it all, and you have heard it. I think we have now really kind of a good widespread adoption around everything AI in a lot of organizations, but also in society through the whole kind of movements of the last couple of years. On the other hand, we're also seeing that if you look at it from a company perspective, and that's what we're talking about in terms of how organizations are adopting, 94% are talking about it, and only 6% are really scaling in the AI space. So that numbers are still a little bit scary, mainly also in terms of as we look at it from a European perspective and a German perspective. So in the end, about we talk about realization of the value of AI. What is it? Is it only productivity? Is it efficiency? Is it growth? Is it new business models that will kind of take over? Where are we going with that one? And how do we move from the classical proof of concept kind of way of doing things to something that is not only scaling, but that's also kind of adding value end to end? From my perspective, it's all about having the human in the loop. I remember sometimes in my former careers before I joined BCG as a strategy firm, I spent some time at IBM, I spent some time on some other companies, and in these days we talked about how do we want to call this thing AI? And then there was the kind of notion to say, hey, don't we need to talk it artificial intelligence or automated intelligence or whatever, let's call it out as augmented intelligence, in terms of helping the human to be more successful. And that's a little bit the spirit of the discussion I think we were going for today. And I want to make it very positive today. So in the end, it's about celebrating as well, understanding what is working well, and going into this direction. So let's start from a corporate world. Johannes, you're a board member. You're really kind of into that on a day-to-day basis. You're also responsible in this position for a lot of people that are working with AI. You're driving one of the big AI adoptions also together with one of the big firms, Google. I think that's not a secret here. And I think you can be seen as one of the successful players in this area. So my question, let's start with it. Are we too critical in Germany in terms of our successes around digitalization, artificial intelligence? Are we not celebrating too much?
So, yeah, excellent question. I think celebrating is also important. I think especially at this time. So we are so focused on implementation. Sometimes it's super important to make a step back and look where we are right now. And when it comes to Signal Iduna, we will see, our workforce will retire by 30% in the next 10 years. What that means for us, it's super crucial that we are pretty fast in adoption, and adoption starts with, I would say, small steps. When I see the productivity increase, especially in service and IT, I think it's around 30 up to 50%, and we started our Gen AI journey in 2023. We decided to build our first agent. It calls our COSI, also our health assistant agent, especially also in human in the loop. At these times, we had the totally claims increase by 25%. And it really helped our call center agent when they use these company-wide GPT, I would say, and we reduced the handover time from one agent to the another agent. And I think everybody here in the room knows the moment when you're calling your insurance company and someone is answering your call and said, okay, I hand you over to my colleague. And at this time, we reduced the time from 27 to 3%. So what that means is that doubled our NPS. Did this change the whole Signal Iduna? Not yet. But it really gave us, I would say, also the power, also the mandate from the board that we decided right now that we will go with Agent Space, Google Agent Space, that we will roll out Agent Space in October. So I think we decided after this first use case, don't build next use cases, create use. And I think this is what we share, Leonard, creating use. Don't go too much for use cases, creating use, and maybe I can explain it a little bit later. So we are rolling out the agentic world to the entire Signal Iduna in October. And what that means is a little bit, what is leadership all about right now? It's you have to observe what your employees are doing with AI. You have to discuss it. You have to give them a clear mandate. But I think the most important thing is creating a little bit like a movement, finding the right use cases. And I think you can find use cases top down, but you have to observe and enable your own organization by using this new technology in their daily life. And I can't wait to see what kind of agents we are creating together with Agent Space.
Awesome. Let's come to the truffles then. That was a good intro because, I love the area where they grow the truffles or where they find the truffles. I live part of the year in the area of Piemonte where this comes from. And now we have someone who really understands how to find truffles. So Judith, coming to this point, in terms of you are looking at it more in terms of also as a founder and you find these truffles, one of the truffles sits left to you. The question is really, how do you think that really kind of, what does it mean in terms of coming from the startup world? How do you see this adoption coming to the society and how does it influence also more than just the company you're working with? So how can organizations scale quicker and more efficient? Tell us about your truffles.
So there's plenty of truffles in the European and in the global startup ecosystem. One is sitting here, and we're also investors in Lovable. Lovable is one of the fastest growing companies ever. They reached 100 million in ARR with just 40 people, so something that is unheard of. It allows anyone to build anything by way of using natural language. And so we have all these examples of AI-first companies that look very different from companies 10 or 20 years ago. We say SaaS is dead, software as a service is dead, but we're not negative, we're positive. And so kind of AI-first is really in. And I think one thing that's beautiful about AI-first is if you go to Berlin these days, or if you go to Silicon Valley, the people building some of the most powerful companies are only 16, 17, 20, 21 years of age. It doesn't, you don't require a lot of prior industry expertise or knowledge to really be able to make a big dent with this technology. So I think that's something that's radically empowering, and this agency that everyone is having through AI, I think is something to really be celebrated. But what are the learnings that we have, kind of as VCs in terms of what we're seeing work in terms of AI adoption within companies? I think there's 4 things that I've broadly observed. The first thing is AI adoption really needs to be top-down. So whoever is the founder of a company, it could be the 17-year-old, we call them cracked engineers, the 17-year-old kid that's starting a company, or it could be the 40-year-old, kind of operator, founder of a scale-up, already having thousands of, employees. You need to be AI first. AI is not something that you can outsource to your CTO or to your, chief product officer. If you, as a leader of an organization, are not playing and using AI tools every single day, you will completely and utterly lack the intuition of understanding what is possible and what isn't possible. You have to have played with Nano Banana and have used, which is the most recent image model from Google. In order to understand what a breakthrough that is, you need to have used 2 models prior to Nano Banana to understand the kinds of jumps that we're making in the tech. So don't outsource it. It needs to come from leaders first. At the same time, you need to enable bottom-up adoption. And this is what we're seeing work in the best organizations. This is not about, certain gateways and, kind of how to stage rollout. It's basically about opening the floodgates and giving as much budget and degrees of freedom to your employees as possible. Not saying you're not going to get, kind of money to try that tool. You're not going to get that. Enable as many use cases as possible to really see what comes up bottom up. The third thing that we're observing is really hackathons. It sounds like something that is playful, and I'm not sure who here has been part of a hackathon ever. Who's done a hackathon? That's roughly maybe a third of the audience. Do a hackathon. I really mean it. It sounds like something that 16-year-old kids do. No, you need to do it to understand the value that it can drive. I guarantee you're going to do the first hackathon, and the first hackathon is going to be shit. It's not going to work well, you're not going to have great results, the outcomes are going to be subpar. Then run a second hackathon, then run a third, then run a fourth. And I can guarantee you that the results that you're seeing out of AI hackathons are going to increase over time. And the last thing that we're seeing is really driving visibility about how AI gets adopted within the organization. We see some scale-ups that really do kind of weekly shout-outs, and they have weekly demonstrations of what's already working. We have scale-ups who are, kind of doing even weekly leaderboards where you show, kind of the people who are, driving most AI adoption are using ChatGPT or other solutions the most. And so these are kind of 4 recipes that we've seen, AI native or AI first companies adopt that really drive tangible results on the ground.
Super. Leonard, you're in both 2 roles now. Yeah? You're one of the pick truffles, so you scale through your vision on AI and how if you integrated that in your own business model, but you're also helping more classic organizations in terms of driving exactly the second part that you kind of illustrated well with hackathon kind of thing, but there's also a piece in terms of the top-down thing. So you're really getting the whole organization along. So what's your experience and how can you help, and what are the war stories you can share with us in terms of how to drive these kind of adoption?
Yeah, I think it seems like for the past few years until ChatGPT, AI was like this fuzzy thing and nobody really knew what it was and how it worked and where it was used. And then ChatGPT happened and everybody kind of got a glimpse of what the future may look like. And I think everybody has kind of used ChatGPT over the last 2 years and found use cases for themselves. And to us, that's kind of this consumer-centric ChatGPT application that kind of is taking over the world and enabling lots of use cases and shows users what they can do with AI. And then on the other side, I think you have organizations trying to kind of make sense of this. Like how can they kind of use this and scale this and roll this out in a secure and kind of GDPR compliant way and so on. And we saw kind of this friction there of like most of the people like using it privately, sometimes more in the business setting than the private setting, and organizations struggling to kind of really driving adoption across it and kind of leveraging and kind of building on top of this. And so what we've built with like the software we're providing is essentially a company GPT or like a ChatGPT that kind of caters to all the enterprise needs. And this is something that we did after talking to like a bunch of scale-up leaders in like Europe 2 years ago, when they were kind of, as you mentioned, kind of starting to build their own intuition by using these tools, but struggled to kind of get into like across the internal hurdles of really like rolling this out to their employees. And what we've been seeing ever since is everybody kind of wants to have these agentic systems and automate work and so on. But if you look at organizations, they tend to be larger than just a few people if you really want to scale this. And if it's larger than a few people, like 100, 200, 300 people plus, it's like we're a tech business, but it's more like a change management mandate. And it's something that like I think organizations have a hard grasp of really kind of getting to properly align. I think most of the points, like the points that Judith had mentioned, are all things that we are seeing. Like you kind of need mandate from the top that understands how these systems work and how they can be useful for like your specific use case. But you also need to create momentum across your organization to really leverage the benefits of these models and kind of create a positive momentum around this. Because I feel like, and we may get to this later, but there's like lots of insecurity around like what does it even mean to kind of send a prompt, like where does it save and so on. And I think that's honestly like I think the main war stories that we could tell are about kind of bad strategies around trying to adopt this technology internally. Because I think ChatGPT has been this blessing where people understand how to use AI, and the biggest question is how can you enable as many people as possible within organizations to use this in a secure and kind of private setting to understand for themselves what use cases may be out there. And then once you have that, you can think about, okay, we now want integrations into source systems, or we want to kind of drive a process around understanding which processes we could augment or automate. But this all comes after setting the tone, like a positive tone in the organization around adopting AI.
Cool. Let me just put it a little bit in a different direction. You know, we're all talking about how the human in the loop is super important and how we take them along. Now we're living in a European setup, we're living in a German setup here, Bavarian setup today, and you know we have a lot of discussions around sovereignty at the moment as well. Yeah, that's coming across in terms of what do we do? Do we want to have our own LLMs, our own infrastructure, and so on and so forth. That all comes along with the human in the loop and brings the things together. So Judith, I'd like to start with you. You have, I think, a perspective across the world, what's happening at the moment. So any how would I say it, tips, any recommendations, how we should tackle that in a positive way? We have all these kind of regulative kind of things. We have the sovereignty discussion. We have the pressure from the other kind of international players in this kind of thing. How do we want to tackle that, and how do we get humans along to overcome all of that? I would also make say, looking at the papers and so on, also kind of a negative hurdle that we sometimes see from a pure sentiment perspective. Yeah.
I think it's a brilliant question, and it's also a really hard question. I think the way to answer for me is you need to start with belief. If I look around, especially the German landscape, and that includes scale-up companies, startup companies, and it includes industrial companies. We talk about the AI stack, right? We talk about the application layer. That's where Leonard's company sits. We talk about the model layer, OpenAI, Anthropic, and the likes. And then we talk about the hardware layer, NVIDIA, Intel, and so on and so forth. today a large part of the value creation sits at the model and the infrastructure, the hardware layer. And when I look around Germany, I feel that we've lost the belief that we could even play a role there. I look around and people are kind of not even trying to compete at those layers anymore because of a lack of belief that we could still move the needle. And for Europe and kind of a nation or a bundle of nations that have achieved absolutely incredible things over the last couple of decades, hundreds of years, thousands of years, it is incredible to believe that so early on in the AI race, if we thought about kind of Gen AI as a marathon, we would still be on the first kilometer of this race, and already we've given up the belief that we can win. So the first thing for me is, rekindling the belief, because after belief comes the actual competition and comes the actual ability to drive results. One analogy that I always have is, if you thought about you had to compete in the Olympic Games tomorrow, all of you, and you had to compete in archery and fencing, two things you've never done in your life. What would you do if your life depended on winning in the Olympic Games? Would you just say, I'm not going to be able to win, I'm not even going to try to train archery and fencing that you've never done? Of course not. You'd every single day of the next year, you'd get in the ring, you'd try to get better at archery, and you'd try to get better at fencing. This is the mindset that we need to bring to AI. Treat this as if it was our Olympic Games. This is, in my view, the biggest technological shift that we're going to see, that humanity will ever see, and this is not the moment in time to stop believing that we actually can compete.
So,
Awesome.
what that means is for organizations is that we have to create it a little bit more like a gym, right? So starting on an everyday training with AI, integrated in your daily life. Exactly, I think this is what you need also for the Olympic Games. You have to train every day.
Absolutely.
Yes. Lennart, just like a short statement on that one. If you think about this kind of sovereignty piece, we know we now need to be believers, and we need to go to the gym more often. That's something I learned as well. What's your statement on that? What's your point of view?
Yeah, I feel like this obviously kind of has increased in relevance over the last few months or years. If you kind of look at the landscape, I think in regulation terms in Germany or like in Europe, we have like GDPR. I think that's kind of a well understood concept by now, like by most people. I think there's clear kind of guidelines around what to do and what not to do. I think what's new is the EU AI Act, which is still kind of developing in terms of what's happening. And I feel like regulation there can help in just kind of like laying out the kind of the rules of the game that we're playing. It's obviously kind of, it's hard to regulate something where developments are so quick that it's very hard to anticipate how you would want to regulate that. But I think like it's like, I haven't talked to anyone in AI who's like opposed to regulation per se. I think the question is like, how do you go about it? And who are the stakeholders that kind of need to be involved in making sensible regulation that helps all of us? And I think like it's such a, as Judith put it, like such a tremendous opportunity right now. I think we have like 1/3 of Germans will go into retirement in like the next 15 years, and they won't like all be one by one replaced. And it's going to be quite tough to kind of do this with fewer people and kind of like secure what we've built out. So I feel like there needs to be like a sensible way around that. For us, like that means that on the application layer, we've kind of built our software in a way that it can be deployed anywhere. So like we still rely, or our customers rely mostly on hyperscalers from the US that have now more European data centers and so on. And we see kind of movement there and more at least kind of appreciation for kind of local offerings. But it's like still an ongoing development.
I just want to give Johannes the last point, also to show us your perspective on that one. I think it's a super important one, as you're also tackling that in a day-to-day basis.
I share 100% your point. So I think concrete in your business, so insurance is highly regulated. What that means in a daily life, for example, when you starting your agentic journey, I think start the dialogue, especially with BaFin, very early, because we are all on the same learning or training path. So start the dialogue early, include your working councils. So as I said before, we will see in our workforce, people are retiring like 30%. We have not the problem that we will see big layoffs, but you can make this very clear from the beginning. So I think have these major obstacles, have it clear in your organization. Where is AI is really for, and how can I help this to transform our business? And I think for me, talking early to the regulator is super important.
That's good. Super. Any questions from the audience? We have 1 minute left before we close it. Anybody has a question? Please We have a mic over there as well, or you can just.
As a young founder and developer, my question is, what type of model should I use? Because as you said, like first of all, I really enjoyed what you said, and I think you have a really good point. But what model should I use? Because I know that AI application. Julian, come on stage. We don't understand.
Yes. And jump.
Julian, speech.
Hey, Julian.
Ah, Julian.
Hey.
Cheers.
Yes, just hopefully that they turn it on. Try.
Okay. So as a young developer and someone interested in founding AI application or startup in the future, what type of model should I use, or how should I push AI development in Germany or in Europe? Because if I would now build an AI application on the model level, I would use American products, but that wouldn't really help Europe's case. So what would your advice be to kind of start this new AI revolution in Europe?
You did, I think. Either Leonard or you did,
I can
think.
start and then you can take over. I think like most of the people that build AI startups that we are aware of, like in Berlin, Europe, anywhere here, they don't solely focus on building on top of one model, but they're essentially building a system where they can switch out these models as they kind of see fit. And I think like what we're, for example, doing is we enable our customers to choose which models they want to use. If it's like their own models, they can even kind of buy their own GPUs, or models by large providers. We essentially just give them the application layers on top of that. And we essentially saw most of the startups doing something like that to also kind of hedge their bets around not being locked in on one model provider.
I think it's a great question. With the fund I was previously running, La Familia, we were actually also investors in Mistral. You might have heard the news. They raised 1.7 billion in funding from ASML and announced that yesterday. So I do think we have some companies that are trying to build sovereign European models. But to be honest, next to what Lennart said, this is the single biggest thing I want your generation to go onto the streets and demonstrate for. Like, I do not understand that we are, I really mean it. I don't understand that we're just sitting back and saying, this intelligence explosion, we're just gonna leave to the Americans and the Chinese. Like, what the hell? Everyone wake up today and understand the strategic importance of this. And there's all these causes. I'm a huge fan of Fridays for Future and climate change, like lots of great causes that young people are going to the streets and demonstrating for. This is one of the causes. Like, rally your friends, start a movement. We can't wait for anyone else to drive the bus for us. We need to drive the bus. And so, it's a great question. I don't have the answer, but I think we all need to be part of the answer.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Super. Julius, I'm summarizing as we are out of time. Summarizing. We have to be believers, we have to go to the gym, and we need Julius to save us with this new initiative. Thank you.